How's it going, everyone? Coach Javi here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, another informative, educational type of video. We're going to be talking about ID camps and open tryouts. So open tryouts as far as maybe a professional club, and ID camps obviously in terms of college recruiting and whether you're trying to play NCAA Division I or NAIA or whatever other college levels. So the question that's circulating this type of topic a lot is, are these open tryouts and ID camps scams? Are they a money grab, or are they actually worth it for you to try and get recruited, for you to try to sign a professional contract, or should you go a different route? So we're gonna break this video down and I'm gonna try and cover it as best as I can. Yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So if you guys are new to this channel, my name is Coach Javi. I coach at Detroit City FC. I'm currently the assistant coach. DCFC is in NISA, which is the third division of professional US soccer. So what I want to start off this video with is explain to you guys a little bit of how we do things here at DCFC, so you guys get an idea of what it looks like from our perspective. We host open tryouts pretty much every January, usually about a month before the preseason starts. I'm not exactly sure how much we charge, but I know it's not something that would break the bank. And regardless of whether you get picked from those tryouts, that money still goes towards a match ticket, I believe, and maybe a scarf or something like that. So you're not completely throwing your money away. You do get something for your money if you don't make it. The way we run it is it's just a one-day event. We run it for about 3 hours, I believe, and we make sure that everyone gets plenty of playing time. So we let the players get their own stretches, making sure that they do whatever they need to do to warm up, and then we'll go into maybe a technical passing exercise, something very simple, and then straight into it with the games right after that. So we try not to waste too much time because it is only about a 3-hour event. We also employ current players on the roster to go and scout at these tryouts. So we have myself, the head coach, maybe 2 more local coaches that we know to help us out, and on top of that we get about 6 to 8 players from our professional roster who act as the coaches or the facilitators. They don't really do any coaching, but what they do is when the games are being played, they make sure that everyone's getting subbed in, everyone's getting enough playing time, and it allows us to have eyes on every single part of the field, looking at every single player so we don't miss anyone. After the tryouts are over, we take the roster sheet that we all had and we mark down the players that we found interesting, the players that we liked, that we thought, okay, maybe this is someone that we want to invite to preseason. The gaffer takes all of these names and we typically pick out anywhere between 5 to 8 players from the tryouts. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe we limit our tryouts to a little bit less than 70 or 80 players, somewhere around there, because obviously we want to get everyone with enough playing time. But out of those players, we do try and pick a few that are going to join us in preseason so we can see a little bit more. But if I'm being completely honest, it's a very slim chance, because after they pass the tryout stage, they have to go into preseason with us, where we're bringing players from other professional clubs who might want to sign a contract, or our current players in our current roster. We're trying to build it for the actual season. So usually by that point, it's very difficult for them to actually sign a contract because the skill level is so high when we go into preseason. Now, we have signed some players from tryouts, not that many, but it is a fair chance if you are good enough to showcase your abilities to get invited to go into preseason. And then obviously if you do well there, then you get to sign a contract. So how do the others do it? So what I've noticed from different ID camps and different tryouts is the shorter the time is for the tryout, the less likely they're actually looking to get someone to sign a contract. So I know a lot of you guys realize that this is a money grab or a way to fund the program. Think about that when you're signing up for these tryouts, because I've been to tryouts where we've gotten maybe 35 to 60 minutes of actual game time, and in 35 to 60 minutes, when you're trying to play in an 11v11 match and you have no idea how the rest of the players play, everyone's trying to show in that little amount of time what they can do. It ends up being not the best showcase of someone's true ability. So if you take a look at some of the longer tryouts, some of the residency programs, or the 2-day, 3-day open tryouts, then those are going to give you a much better idea of whether a player is good enough to sign for that team. So think about that when you're signing up for these open tryouts or these ID camps. How much time are you actually going to get to play? And is that going to be worth it, or is that going to be enough for you to really showcase your ability, considering you're going to be playing with a bunch of players that you've never met before and you don't know what their skills are and you know how they're going to be able to play in relation to you. And you do have to remember that ultimately a lot of this money from the tryout goes and funds the club. If it's a smaller club, that money is going to be a little bit more impactful. And obviously if it's a bigger team, then it could be a little bit more of a social media stint where these clubs are doing open tryouts just so that they can look good in front of the press and they can advertise to these young men and women that, you know, there is a chance to go and sign for this team, although the coaches and the scouts that are at these open tryouts are probably not really looking to get anything out of it other than money to fund the club. So the other thing you can also do is you can look at the roster and look at the testimonials from these open tryouts and these ID camps. Oftentimes they have a website specifically to the tryout. You can see what players have signed where and how many players they took from each year. So if you notice that maybe only one player in the last 5 years has signed from an open tryout for this club or from this company that's hosting these tryouts, then obviously you know your chances are extremely slim because there's not that many players that have actually signed. Another factor that's going to determine whether these are worth it is the level of the team that you're trying out for. So if you're going to a college ID camp and it's a Division I program and it's a big school, the chances of you actually making it from that tryout are going to be a little bit more difficult, as opposed to if you were trying out for a Division III school where they're actually trying to build a roster of good players, because most of the good players have already signed for Division I. If you're going to a college showcase and ID camp, typically there's a lot of different coaches across all different levels there. You'll tend to notice that a lot more Division III coaches are going to be there than Division I coaches. Just like the companies that put together open tryouts for professional clubs, there's going to be a lot more NISA clubs, a lot more USL clubs than there is MLS scouts there, because they know that the chances of them actually signing for a team of that level is going to be quite slim. So the NPSL, the USL League 2, the UPSL, or Division III, junior colleges, NAIA, those organizations and those levels are gonna be looking more towards actually building a roster from these open tryouts. So take that into account. Obviously, you'll know your skill level and whether you're gonna be able to fit in at one of these clubs. And like I said, going back to how we do it at DCFC, even if you do manage to make it past the initial tryout, most of the time, they're not just gonna give you a contract to sign. Instead, they're gonna have you go through a preseason or go through an extended invitational trial at the actual club, which is gonna lower your chances even more when you finally get there and you realize that the skill level is a lot higher than it was at the tryouts. Not saying you can't do it, just take into account most of these places are not gonna get you a contract right away. They're just gonna get you more of a private tryout. So I got a few tips for you in approaching these open tryouts or these ID camps that are gonna help you get the most out of your experience. The first one is use it for the future and not just for the present. Use it to make connections, get to know the coaches. You can't be shy at a tryout because nobody remembers the shy players. Everybody remembers the ones who stuck out for whatever reason. They were loud, they had a presence, they were being very vocal, they looked very confident. Those are players that are gonna be remembered a little bit more. On top of that, off the field is make sure that you try and reach out to the coaches before letting them know that you're gonna attend the tryout. Reach out to them afterwards to thank them as well, and see if you can build relationships with the other players that are there, because you'll notice that when you finally start getting into the world of soccer or football, that world is actually pretty small. You'll run into a lot of the players that you've played with. So if you make friends with a lot of these players and you get your name out there, when you start going to these different trials in different places, you're gonna find a friendly face and you're gonna find someone that already knows you who might be able to put in a good word for you to actually sign that contract. One of the things that we say is that players make the best recruiters. Oftentimes, our players on the roster tell us, I have a friend who's a really good player, I want him to join the team. And because players aren't going to want to play with someone who's bad, they're only going to refer to us friends who are at the level that we actually need. So if you end up making a friend from one of these tryouts, and then later on you realize that they're playing for a professional club, you might be able to reach out and they might be able to get you an invitational tryout. So just think about it that way. The footballing world is actually a lot smaller than you think, and if you build these connections at these tryouts, you're going to run into a lot of these people later on, and that might actually help you get your foot in the door after these tryouts or in the future. Another main tip is make sure that you're in shape. The amount of players that come in with a very good skill level who are not in good physical condition is extremely high at these tryouts. And these tryouts are 2-3 hours, maybe even more, of just playing 11v11 games, which can get very, very tiring. If you come in and you're a good player, but you're out of shape, very quickly you're gonna realize that that's one of the factors that determines a coach's interest level. Sometimes we even see players who play for 30 minutes and then they pull a hamstring or they cramp up and then they can no longer finish the tryout. So don't let your physical condition and you being out of shape affect your ability to actually get looked at, because the last thing that you want is to know that you were good enough but you weren't fit enough. So think about that, and as you're preparing for these tryouts, make sure you're in good shape. So we're gonna wrap up this video with trying to answer this question. Are they worth it for you? The reality is, for some people they are, for some people they aren't. Sometimes they are a scam, sometimes they are a money grab, and sometimes it's an actually good opportunity to get looked at when you may not have any other opportunities elsewhere. So depending on the tryout and how it's formatted, like I said, some of the shorter tryouts, that's already a disadvantage before you even arrive and before you even start playing, because you know you're not going to get enough time and you're going to be playing with a bunch of people you don't know. Some of the more extensive tryouts that might be a week long, a few days long, those are going to give you a much better chance. However, those are obviously going to be a lot more expensive than the ones that are just one day for 2 hours or 3 hours. Pick your battles, figure out, do you think you're going to be good enough to show it in just 2 or 3 hours, or should you pay a little bit more money and get to one of these more extensive tryouts and give yourself a better chance? So with that being said, ultimately you cannot make excuses. If Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo went to an open tryout, I'm sure that they would get signed. Obviously you guys are not Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, but what I'm saying is that if you're a good enough player and you attend enough tryouts, eventually you will get signed. So the people who make excuses and say that all of these open tryouts or these ID camps are a scam or a money grab, while some of them are, if you attend the right ones and you pick and choose your battles, you're going to get signed and you're going to get your foot into the door, whether that means playing Division 1 or playing professional soccer. So that's where we're going to wrap up the video. Obviously, if you guys have any questions for future videos, any educational topics you want me to cover, go ahead and leave those in the comment section down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and you found it useful. That's it for me, guys. Until next time, and adios, muchachos.